There's a quiet difference between men who chase attention and men who naturally attract it. And most people completely misunderstand what creates that difference. They assume it comes from looks, from status, from confidence that fills the room the moment they walk in. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice something far more subtle. The men who create the deepest attraction often speak less, not more. And when they do speak, their words carry a kind of weight that isn't forced or rehearsed. It feels grounded, calm, almost effortless. This is why older men often seem to have an advantage that younger men struggle to understand. It's not just experience or age itself, it's the way they communicate. They don't rush to impress. They don't fill silence with noise. They don't try to prove their value through constant talking. Instead, they create space. And within that space, the right words land differently. What most men don't realize is that attraction is rarely built through what you say on the surface. It's built through what your words make her feel beneath the surface. Every sentence either creates pressure or removes it. It either makes her feel like she needs to perform, or it allows her to relax into who she actually is. And when a woman feels that kind of ease, that's when curiosity begins to grow. That's when she starts leaning in, not because you're trying harder than other men, but because you're doing something they rarely do. They're trying to impress her. You're allowing her to express herself. That shift alone changes everything. Most conversations today feel predictable. Questions are asked without intention. Responses are given without depth. There's a constant effort to appear interesting, to say the right thing, to avoid saying the wrong thing. And in that effort, something important gets lost. The connection becomes mechanical. It feels like two people performing instead of two people actually meeting. But the moment a man speaks with clarity, with presence, with a kind of quiet certainty, the entire dynamic changes. The conversation slows down. It becomes more intentional. And that's where attraction begins to build in a way that feels natural rather than forced. Because here's the truth most men overlook. Women are constantly exposed to attention. Compliments, conversations, attempts to impress, all of it becomes familiar very quickly. What's rare is not attention. What's rare is emotional space. What's rare is a man who isn't trying to take something from the interaction, but instead creates an environment where she feels comfortable revealing something real. And that kind of environment isn't created through clever lines or rehearsed charm. It's created through simple words delivered with the right energy. The first word older men often use without even thinking about it is this: tell me more. On the surface, it seems almost too simple to matter. But the impact of this phrase is far deeper than most realize. When you say, tell me more, you're not just continuing a conversation. You're sending a signal. You're communicating that what she just said is worth exploring further, that her thoughts are not being rushed or dismissed, that you're actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Most men interrupt without noticing. They hear something and immediately jump in with their own story, their own opinion, their own experience. And in doing that, they unintentionally shift the focus back onto themselves. The conversation becomes about being heard rather than understanding. But when you say, tell me more, and then remain quiet, something changes. She feels invited to go deeper. She feels that her words matter in that moment. And more importantly, she begins to associate you with that feeling of being understood. That's where attraction starts to build quietly. It's not loud, it's not obvious, but it lingers. The second phrase that carries the same quiet power is something even more unexpected. Take your time. In a world where everything feels rushed, where conversations move quickly and people feel pressured to respond instantly, this phrase does something different. It slows everything down. It removes urgency. It creates a sense of calm that most interactions don't have. When you say, take your time, you're giving her permission to not perform, to not rush her thoughts, to not feel like she has to respond perfectly. And that permission creates emotional safety. It tells her that she doesn't need to impress you, that she can simply be present. And that kind of presence is what most people are searching for, without even realizing it. You'll notice that when someone feels rushed, their responses become shorter, more guarded. But when they feel relaxed, their words begin to open up. Their tone softens. Their body language shifts. They become more themselves. That's the moment where connection starts to deepen. And here's where most men make a critical mistake. They believe attraction is created by adding more jokes, more stories, more effort. But in reality, attraction often grows when you remove unnecessary pressure, when you create space instead of filling it. Older men understand this intuitively. They don't feel the need to control the conversation. They don't rush toward an outcome. They allow things to unfold naturally. And because of that, their words carry a different kind of energy. It's not about saying more. It's about saying less, with intention. And when a woman experiences that kind of interaction, it feels different from what she's used to. It stands out, not because it's dramatic, but because it's rare. The third phrase builds on this in a way that most men completely overlook. I noticed that. This is where the conversation shifts from listening to truly seeing. But the way you use this matters more than the words themselves. Most compliments focus on the obvious: appearance, style, things that she's heard countless times before. And while those comments might be appreciated, they don't create depth. They don't create intrigue. But when you say, "I noticed that," followed by something specific and thoughtful, something that reflects who she is rather than how she looks, the impact changes entirely. You're no longer just observing her. You're understanding her. And being understood is something people rarely experience on a deeper level. That's what makes it powerful. Because in that moment, she doesn't feel like just another interaction in your day. She feels seen in a way that most people don't take the time to see. And when someone feels seen, they remember who made them feel that way. That's where attraction becomes personal, not because of what you said, but because of how it made her feel. The fourth phrase that carries a kind of quiet depth most men never think to use is this: "You don't have to impress me." At first, it might seem unnecessary to say something like this. After all, why would she feel the need to impress you in the first place? But if you look closely at how most social interactions unfold, you'll notice something subtle. Both people are often performing in small ways, choosing words carefully, adjusting tone, presenting a slightly polished version of themselves. It's not always intentional, but it happens almost automatically. And when that performance is present, even at a low level, it creates a certain kind of tension, a feeling that the interaction needs to go a certain way, that there's something to maintain, something to uphold. But the moment you remove that pressure, the entire dynamic shifts. When you say, "You don't have to impress me," and you mean it, not as a line, not as a tactic, but as a genuine expression, you give her something most people never offer. You give her permission to drop the performance, to stop filtering every word, to relax into something more real. And here's what's interesting about that. When someone feels they don't need to impress you, they often become more engaging without trying. Their personality comes through more naturally. Their humor feels more effortless. Their presence becomes more authentic. That's where connection becomes genuine, because attraction isn't built on performance. It's built on how comfortable someone feels being themselves in your presence. And when you create that environment, you stand out without needing to do anything dramatic. You're not competing for attention anymore. You're creating a space where attention naturally stays. And that leads to the fifth phrase, which might be the most powerful of all, but only when it's used with real understanding behind it. "I understand." Now, on the surface, this phrase is simple. It's common. Almost everyone uses it. But very few people use it in a way that actually carries meaning. Most of the time, it's said quickly, almost automatically, without truly absorbing what the other person shared. And people can feel that difference instantly. When "I understand" is said without presence, it feels empty. But when it's said after you've genuinely listened, after you've allowed her to fully express herself, after you've taken a moment to process what she said, it lands completely differently. It becomes grounding. It becomes reassuring. It becomes something she can feel, not just hear. Because what most people are searching for in conversation is not advice. It's not correction. It's not even agreement. It's understanding. The sense that someone else can see their perspective without immediately trying to change it. And when a man can offer that kind of understanding, without rushing to fix, without turning the conversation back to himself, without interrupting the flow, he becomes someone she associates with emotional clarity. That's where deeper attraction begins to form. Not through excitement or intensity, but through consistency, through calm, through presence. And when you combine all of these phrases together, something important becomes clear. None of them are complicated. None of them are clever. None of them are designed to impress on the surface. What makes them powerful is the energy behind them. Because these aren't just words, they're signals. Signals that you're not rushed. Signals that you're not trying to prove something. Signals that you're comfortable with silence, with space, with depth. And that kind of energy is rare. Most men approach conversations with a sense of urgency. They want something to happen. They want to move things forward. They want to create attraction quickly. And in that urgency, they miss the moments where attraction actually begins. Because attraction doesn't grow under pressure. It grows in comfort. It grows in curiosity. It grows in those quiet spaces where two people feel like they don't need to force anything. Older men tend to understand this, not because they learned a set of lines, but because they've experienced what doesn't work. They've seen how forcing conversation leads nowhere. They've seen how trying too hard creates distance instead of connection, so they slow down. They become more selective with their words. They speak less, but when they do, it carries intention. And that intention is what creates impact. Because at the end of the day, women are not drawn to words alone. They're drawn to how those words make them feel over time, whether they feel relaxed or tense, whether they feel heard or overlooked, whether they feel like they can be themselves or whether they feel like they need to perform. And when you consistently create a feeling of ease, of understanding, of genuine presence, something begins to shift. She stops analyzing the interaction. She stops questioning where things are going. She simply experiences the moment. And that's when attraction becomes natural. Not something you're trying to build, but something that forms on its own. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need more words. You don't need better lines. You don't need to impress her. What you need is awareness. Awareness of how your words land. Awareness of the space you create in conversation. Awareness of whether you're trying to perform or whether you're allowing something real to unfold. Because the men who stand out aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make people feel the most. And sometimes, all it takes is a few simple words, spoken with the right presence, to create something that lasts far beyond the conversation itself. So now I'm curious, which one of these phrases stood out to you the most? Let me know below.